Jimin gives Jungkook a mysterious ring and disappears, leaving one haunting promise that slowly reveals a secret neither can escape. Jungkook, whatever happens tonight, do not give this ring back to me. Jimin's voice was so quiet that Jungkook almost missed the words beneath the violent pounding of rain against the apartment windows. Jungkook stared at him. The room smelled of wet asphalt, cold coffee, and the faint metallic scent of blood. Jimin was standing 3 steps away, soaked from head to toe, his dark hair dripping onto his forehead. His breathing was uneven. One sleeve of his black jacket was torn near the shoulder, and there was a thin red line across his palm. But none of that frightened Jungkook as much as the ring resting between Jimin's fingers. It was small, simple, a dark silver band with a tiny symbol carved into the inside. Jimin had been staring at it for several seconds before finally placing it in Jungkook's hand. "Keep this until I get back." Jungkook closed his fingers around it. "Get back from where?" Jimin didn't answer. "Jimin, I can't tell you." "Then tell me who you're running from." Jimin's eyes lifted. For one terrible second, Jungkook saw something he had never seen in Jimin before. Fear. Not nervousness. Not uncertainty. Fear. The kind that lived deep beneath the skin and waited patiently for the right moment to surface. Jimin swallowed. "If someone comes looking for this ring, you don't have it." Jungkook frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "I know." "Then explain it." "I can't." "You keep saying that." "And I keep meaning it." Thunder rolled across the sky. Jimin glanced toward the window. That small movement made Jungkook realize something else. Jimin wasn't waiting for someone to arrive. Jimin was waiting for someone to leave. Jungkook stepped closer. "Where are you going?" Jimin looked at him. "I don't know." The answer made Jungkook's chest tighten. "You don't know where you're going?" "No." "Then how do you know you'll come back?" Jimin's lips parted. For several seconds, no answer came. Then Jimin smiled. It wasn't his usual smile. It was fragile, almost apologetic. "I don't." Jungkook's fingers tightened around the ring. "Don't say that." Jimin looked away. "Jungkook." "No." Jungkook shook his head. "You don't get to walk into my apartment in the middle of the night looking like you've been chased through half the city, give me a ring, tell me not to give it back, and then say you don't know if you're coming home." "I know." "Then stay." "Silence." "Stay, Jimin." Jimin's eyes closed. For one heartbeat, Jungkook thought he had won. Then the sound came. 3 knocks. Slow. Precise. Knock. 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 Jimin's entire body froze. Jungkook turned toward the door. "Who is that?" Jimin whispered, "Don't answer." Another 3 knocks. Jungkook looked back at Jimin. The color had drained from Jimin's face. "Jimin, turn off the lights." "What?" Jungkook now. Something in Jimin's voice made him obey. The apartment fell into darkness. Rain continued striking the glass. Jungkook could hear his own breathing. Then footsteps sounded outside the door. 1, 2, 3. Someone stopped directly outside. Jimin moved silently toward Jungkook. "Put the ring somewhere they won't find it." "Where?" Jimin reached for Jungkook's hand. Their fingers touched. "On you." Jungkook stared at him. "What does that mean?" Jimin's thumb brushed over the ring. "It means if they find the ring, they'll find me." The doorknob moved. Jungkook's heart slammed against his ribs. Jimin stepped backward. Jimin, don't. The lock clicked. Jimin looked at Jungkook one last time. There was something in his eyes that felt painfully final. Then the lights suddenly returned. The door was still locked. The hallway outside was empty. Jungkook rushed toward it. He opened the door. Nothing. Only cold air. Only rain. Only an empty hallway stretching beneath flickering lights. Jimin. No answer. Jungkook spun around. Jimin was gone. The window was open. Rainwater had scattered across the floor. Jungkook ran toward it and looked down. 4 floors below, the alley was empty. No footsteps. No car. No shadow. Nothing. Jungkook stood there, frozen, until something inside his clenched fist began to hurt. He opened his hand. The ring was still there. But now Jungkook noticed something he hadn't seen before. The tiny symbol inside the ring wasn't a symbol. It was a set of numbers. 07-1903. Jungkook stared at them. Then his phone vibrated. One message. Unknown number. Jungkook opened it. If Jimin gave you the ring, it means he trusted you more than he trusted himself. A second message appeared. Do not let Jimin find you. Jungkook's blood turned cold. Because a moment later, a third message arrived. He is not coming back for the ring. Jungkook stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. He is coming back for you. The message disappeared from Jungkook's screen before he could read it again. He stood beside the open window, rain misting his face, the ring cold against his palm. For several seconds, Jungkook didn't move. Then he locked the window. He checked the door, the chain, the deadbolt, the handle. Again and again. His hands were shaking. Coming back for me. The words escaped his mouth like a question thrown into an empty room. Jimin was supposed to be the one in danger. Jimin was the one who had arrived bleeding. Jimin was the one who had looked terrified. But now the message had changed everything. Jungkook walked back toward the table. The coffee Jimin had left untouched was still there. Cold. Half full. Jungkook stared at it. Jimin always finished his coffee. Always. Even when it was terrible. Even when it had been sitting for hours. Jimin had once joked that drinking cold coffee was a test of character. You don't drink coffee, Jimin had told Jungkook months ago. I drink it when you make it. That isn't coffee, that's emotional blackmail. Jungkook had laughed. Jimin had laughed too. The memory felt impossibly distant now. Jungkook sat down. He placed the ring on the table. The numbers stared back at him. 07-1903. He picked up his phone and searched them. Nothing. He tried different combinations. July 19. March 7. 1903. Nothing. Then he remembered Jimin's habit. Whenever Jimin was nervous, he tapped his fingers against his thigh. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Jungkook had always assumed it was meaningless. Now he wasn't so sure. Jungkook looked at the ring again. 07-1903. 3 numbers. 3 pauses. 3 possibilities. He picked up his phone and typed the sequence. 7-19-3. A location appeared. Jungkook's stomach dropped. It wasn't a name. It was an abandoned train station on the eastern edge of the city. Jungkook stood so quickly that the chair fell backward. No. He stared at the location. Jimin had gone there. He knew it. Jungkook grabbed his jacket, then stopped. Jimin's voice returned to his mind. Whatever happens tonight, do not give this ring back to me. Jungkook looked at the ring. He slipped it onto his finger. It fit perfectly. That frightened him more than anything. Jimin had known his size. Jimin had chosen the ring for him. Maybe long before tonight. Maybe this wasn't an emergency decision. Maybe Jimin had been preparing for this moment for months. Jungkook grabbed his keys. His phone vibrated. Another message. Don't go to the station. Jungkook froze. Then another. Jimin wants you to go there. A third. That's exactly why you must not. Jungkook stared at the screen. His jaw tightened. Who are you? He typed the question. The reply arrived instantly. Someone who knows what Jimin did. Jungkook's thumb hovered over the keyboard. What did Jimin do? No answer. Jungkook waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello. Static. Then breathing. Slow. Uneven. Jungkook. Jungkook stopped breathing. It was Jimin. Jimin. Listen to me. Where are you? Don't ask. Are you hurt? I'm fine. You're lying. Silence. Jungkook gripped the phone harder. Jimin, please. I need you to do something. Anything. Take the ring off. Jungkook stared at his hand. No. Jungkook. You told me to keep it. I changed my mind. You don't change your mind about things like this. I do when you're in danger. You said the ring would protect me. I said nothing like that. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. You said if they find the ring, they'll find you. I shouldn't have said that. Why? Because I wasn't thinking clearly. Jimin, take it off. No. Jungkook, please. The word struck him. Jimin almost never said please. Not like that. Not with fear hiding underneath it. Jungkook sat down slowly. Tell me where you are. I can't. Then tell me who has you. I don't have anyone. Then why do I hear chains? Silence. Jungkook's blood ran cold. On the other end of the call, something metallic scraped across the floor. Jimin inhaled sharply. Jimin. The line crackled. Jungkook. His voice had changed. It was quieter. Closer. Almost a whisper. If someone tells you I left because I wanted to. Jimin paused. Don't believe them. Jungkook stood. Jimin, what happened? I need you to remember one thing. What? You were never supposed to be involved. The line went dead. Jimin. Jungkook called again. No answer. Again. Nothing. He threw the phone onto the table. Then immediately picked it up. He couldn't leave. He couldn't stay. Every instinct inside him was screaming in a different direction. But one thing was clear. Jimin had lied. And Jungkook needed to know why. He opened the message from the unknown number again. Someone who knows what Jimin did. Jungkook typed, "Tell me everything." The reply came after several seconds. "Then come alone." A location appeared. Jungkook stared at it. It wasn't the station. It was an old bookstore downtown. The place where Jimin and Jungkook had first met. Jungkook's heart sank. Jimin had taken him there once. Years ago. Back when they were strangers. Jimin had been standing in front of a shelf, holding a book upside down. Jungkook had corrected him. Jimin had laughed. You noticed. Anyone would notice. No, most people don't look closely. Jungkook remembered that sentence now. Most people don't look closely. He had thought Jimin was talking about books. Maybe he had been talking about himself. Jungkook left the apartment. The rain had weakened into a cold drizzle. The city looked different at night. Streetlights reflected in puddles. Cars moved like shadows. Every passing face made Jungkook wonder whether someone was watching him. He kept one hand inside his jacket pocket. The ring pressed against his finger. 20 minutes later, Jungkook reached the bookstore. The sign above the entrance was broken. The windows were covered with dust. The door was unlocked. Jungkook pushed it open. A bell rang. Once, then silence. Hello. No answer. The smell of old paper filled the air. Jungkook stepped inside. Rows of books disappeared into darkness. He moved slowly. I'm here. A voice came from somewhere behind him. You shouldn't have come. Jungkook turned. A man stood between two shelves. He was older than Jimin. Maybe in his 40s. His face was tired. His eyes were sharp. Jungkook didn't recognize him. You know Jimin. The man nodded. You know where he is. Another nod. Then tell me. The man looked at the ring. His expression changed. You're wearing it. Jungkook instinctively covered his hand. Jimin gave it to me. I know. How? Because Jimin gave it to me first. Jungkook froze. What? The man reached into his coat. Jungkook stepped backward. Don't. The man stopped. Then slowly removed a photograph. He placed it on the table. Jungkook walked closer. The photograph showed Jimin. But not the Jimin Jungkook knew. This Jimin looked younger. His face was bruised. His clothes were dirty. Beside him stood the same man. And behind them was a black vehicle. Jungkook picked up the photograph. When was this taken? 3 years ago. Jungkook's eyes widened. That's impossible. Why? Because Jimin told me he had never been here. The man smiled sadly. Jimin has told you many things. Jungkook looked at him. How many of them were true? The man's expression hardened. Enough to make you trust him. Jungkook felt anger rising inside him. Stop talking in riddles. Then ask the right question. What happened 3 years ago? The man looked toward the dark window. Jimin disappeared. He disappeared. For 11 months. Jungkook's throat tightened. Where? We don't know. Then how do you know this photograph is real? Because I was there when it was taken. Jungkook stared at him. The man stepped closer. And because I was the one who helped Jimin escape. Jungkook's heartbeat became louder. What was he escaping from? The man didn't answer immediately. Then he looked directly into Jungkook's eyes. From himself. The words made Jungkook go still. The man continued. Jimin wasn't the victim you think he was. Jungkook shook his head. No. You asked me to tell you the truth. I did. Then listen. The man pointed toward the ring. That ring belonged to a group of people who disappeared 3 years ago. Jungkook looked down. Jimin found it. No. The man's voice dropped. Jimin stole it. Jungkook's fingers went numb. Why? Because it contained proof. Proof of what? The man opened his mouth. Before he could answer, every light in the bookstore went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Jungkook heard the sound of the front door opening. The man whispered one sentence. Jimin was never running away from them. Jungkook turned toward him. Then who was he running from? The man's answer came from the darkness. From the person Jimin became when he realized what he'd done. From the person Jimin became when he realized what he'd done. The words had barely left the man's mouth when the bookstore door slammed shut. Jungkook spun toward the sound. Who's there? No answer. Only the soft ticking of an old wall clock somewhere in the darkness. Dig, dig, dig. Jungkook's breathing became shallow. The man beside him suddenly grabbed his wrist. Don't move. Let go of me. Not yet. Something scraped across the floor behind them. Jungkook turned his head slowly. A shadow moved between the shelves. Then another. The man pulled Jungkook toward a narrow doorway. Quiet. Jungkook followed, though every part of him wanted to run. They slipped into a cramped storage room filled with cardboard boxes and the smell of dust and old paper. The man closed the door without making a sound. Jungkook whispered, "Who are they?" "People looking for the ring." "You said the ring was proof." "It is." "Proof of what?" The man stared at Jungkook. "You still don't understand." "Then explain it." "The ring isn't valuable because of what it is." He pointed at Jungkook's hand. "It is valuable because of what it can open." Jungkook looked down. The dark silver ring suddenly felt heavier. "What does it open?" "A vault." Jungkook frowned. "What kind of vault?" "A private archive." "Where?" The man shook his head. "I don't know." Jungkook's frustration surged. "You brought me here to tell me nothing." "I brought you here because Jimin wanted you to know enough to survive." "Jimin wanted me to know." "Yes." "Then why did he tell me to stay away?" "Because Jimin knew you would come anyway." Jungkook went silent. That sounded exactly like Jimin. Jimin had always known Jungkook too well. He knew Jungkook hated unfinished conversations. He knew Jungkook couldn't ignore someone in danger. He knew Jungkook would rather walk into a burning building than spend a night wondering whether someone he loved was trapped inside. The thought made Jungkook's chest tighten. Someone he loved. The words frightened him, because he had never said them aloud. Not even to himself. A sudden crash came from the bookstore. The man pressed one finger to his lips. Footsteps approached. Slow. Heavy. They stopped directly outside the storage room. Jungkook held his breath. The door handle moved. Once. Twice. Then stopped. A voice came through the wood. Jungkook. His heart nearly stopped. It was Jimin. Jungkook took a step toward the door. "Jimin." The man grabbed him. "Don't." "But that's him." "No." Jungkook stared at him. "How do you know?" The man whispered. "Because Jimin would never call your name like that." Jungkook listened. The voice came again. Jungkook opened the door. It sounded exactly like Jimin. The same softness, the same breath between words, the same slight tremble. Jungkook's hand moved toward the handle. The man caught his wrist. Listen carefully. The voice outside changed. Jungkook, please. Jungkook froze. Jimin always said please when he was genuinely afraid. But something was wrong. The voice was perfect. Too perfect. There was no breathing. No hesitation. No movement. Just a recording. Jungkook's eyes widened. It's a recording. The man nodded. Yes. A metallic click came from outside. Then the door exploded inward. Jungkook ducked. The man pulled him through a second exit. They ran. Boxes fell behind them. Glass shattered. Someone shouted. Jungkook sprinted through the back corridor, his shoes slipping against the dusty floor. He could hear footsteps following. Vasto! The man pushed open a rear door. Cold rain struck Jungkook's face. They stumbled into an alley. A black vehicle turned the corner. Run! They disappeared between two buildings. Only when they reached a narrow underground passage did the man finally stop. Jungkook bent over, breathing hard. Who were they? The man looked toward the entrance. Not the people I expected. What does that mean? They found us too quickly. Jungkook straightened. Someone told them. Yes. Who? The man didn't answer. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. You're hiding something. So are you. I don't know anything. The man looked at the ring. You know more than you think. Jungkook stared at him. What? The man reached into his pocket and removed a small black device. He placed it against the ring. A faint blue light appeared. Jungkook stepped backward. What is that? An identifier. The device beeped. Once, twice. Then a hidden line of text appeared. Subject Jungkook. Jungkook's face went pale. What? The man looked at him. Your name is already in their system. Jungkook shook his head. No. Jimin didn't give you the ring because he trusted you. Jungkook stared at him. Then why? The man hesitated. Because you're part of the secret. Jungkook's mind raced. No, I would remember. Would you? The question struck him. Jungkook remembered his childhood. His parents. His school. His first job. His first meeting with Jimin. Everything seemed ordinary. But suddenly, fragments began appearing. A locked room. A hospital corridor. A photograph he had never understood. Jimin standing beside him. Jimin crying. Jimin saying something Jungkook couldn't remember. Jungkook pressed a hand against his forehead. Why can't I remember? The man stared at him. Because Jimin asked them to erase it. Jungkook looked up sharply. Jimin did what? 3 years ago, Jimin made a deal. With whom? To save you. Silence. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling. Jungkook could barely breathe. Save me from what? The man's eyes softened. From the truth. Jungkook shook his head. No. You don't want to hear it. Yes, I do. You may hate Jimin afterward. I don't care. The man studied him. You might. Jungkook clenched his fist. I said tell me. The man finally spoke. 3 years ago, you and Jimin were not strangers. Jungkook stared at him. You knew each other before the day you thought you met. The world seemed to tilt. No, you were together. Jungkook's lips parted. Together. The man nodded. You and Jimin had already chosen each other. Jungkook's eyes burned. Then why don't I remember? Because something happened. What? The man looked away. Jimin caused it. Jungkook's heart cracked at the words. What did he do? The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and handed Jungkook a small envelope. On the front, written in familiar handwriting, were 4 words. For Jungkook, if forgotten. Jungkook stared at it. His fingers trembled. That's Jimin's handwriting. Yes. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Jungkook pulled it out. The image was old, faded, but unmistakable. Jimin was standing beside Jungkook. Their shoulders touched. Jimin was smiling, and Jungkook was holding Jimin's hand. On the back of the photograph was another message. If you're reading this, I failed to keep you away from me. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. Below that sentence was another. But if you still have the ring, then I have one last chance. Jungkook turned the photograph over again. There was one final line. Find me before I remember what I did to you. Jungkook's breath caught. What does that mean? The man didn't answer. Because somewhere above them, a phone began ringing. Jungkook recognized the ringtone immediately. It was Jimin's. The man looked at him. Don't answer. The phone continued ringing. Jungkook stared at the darkness. Then the call stopped. A message appeared on his screen. It was from Jimin. Jungkook, I'm sorry. Another message arrived. I remember everything now. Jungkook's hands went cold. Then the final message appeared. And I finally remember why you were afraid of me. Jungkook stared at the final message until the words blurred beneath the tears gathering in his eyes. I finally remember why you were afraid of me. The sentence repeated itself inside his head. Jimin, the man who had held his hand in the photograph. Jimin, who had appeared at Jungkook's apartment trembling and bleeding. Jimin, who had placed a ring into Jungkook's palm and told him to keep it until he returned. Jimin, who had disappeared without explaining where he was going. And now Jimin was saying that Jungkook had once been afraid of him. Jungkook lowered the phone. I don't believe it. The older man watched him carefully. You don't have to believe it. Jungkook looked at him. I need the truth. You've been given pieces of it. Pieces aren't enough. No. The man sighed. Then perhaps it's time you remembered the rest. Jungkook's fingers tightened around the photograph. What happened 3 years ago? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward a rusted metal door at the end of the underground passage. He unlocked it. Behind the door was a narrow room illuminated by a single yellow bulb. Inside were dozens of boxes, photographs, files, old phones, hard drives, and photographs of Jimin. Hundreds of them. Jungkook stopped breathing. There were photographs of Jimin walking through streets. Jimin sitting in cafes. Jimin entering buildings. Jimin standing beside cars. But among them were photographs of Jungkook. Jungkook sleeping. Jungkook leaving work. Jungkook walking home. Jungkook sitting alone in a park. Jungkook stared at the wall. Why are there so many pictures of me? The man answered quietly. Because you were being watched. By whom? Everyone who wanted to know what Jimin would do. Jungkook turned. I don't understand. You were Jimin's weakness. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. No, you were. Jimin never treated me like a weakness. That was the problem. The man walked to a cabinet and opened it. He was supposed to keep you away from the organization. Instead, he became attached to you. Jungkook looked at the photographs again. And they noticed. They noticed everything. Jungkook picked up one photograph. It showed Jimin sitting across from him at a small restaurant. Neither of them was smiling. Jungkook's hand was resting on the table. Jimin's hand was covering it. There was something about the image that hurt. Not because it was unfamiliar. Because it felt familiar. Jungkook closed his eyes. A sound surfaced in his memory. Laughter. Jimin's laughter. Then rain. A streetlight. Jimin running toward him. Jungkook opened his eyes sharply. I remember the rain. The man froze. What? 3 years ago. Jungkook touched his temple. There was rain. Yes. I was standing outside. Yes. Jimin came running toward me. The man's face changed. What else? I don't know. Try. Jungkook closed his eyes again. The memory came in fragments. Jimin's face. His wet hair. His hand reaching for Jungkook. A car horn. Someone shouting. Then a flash of white. Jungkook opened his eyes. My head hurt. The man nodded slowly. You were injured. Why? Because someone tried to kill you. Jungkook's stomach dropped. Who? We never found out. But you said Jimin caused it. He did. How? The man looked at him. Jimin was supposed to deliver something. The ring. No. What? A list. Jungkook stared at him. What list? A list of names. Whose names? People who had been involved in illegal operations, disappearances, financial crimes, and cover-ups. Jungkook's eyes widened. Jimin had that list. He stole it. Why? Because he discovered that your name was on it. Jungkook went completely still. My name? Yes. Why would my name be on a list like that? Because you had witnessed something. Jungkook shook his head. I don't remember. You were never supposed to. Why? Because Jimin made sure you forgot. Jungkook's eyes filled with anger. He erased my memory. Not exactly. What does that mean? Jimin found someone who could manipulate the memories associated with the event. Jungkook stared at him. And he agreed to it. He begged for it. Why? Because you wouldn't survive the truth. Jungkook's jaw tightened. You don't know that. I was there. The man's voice cracked slightly. I watched Jimin sit beside you in the hospital for 9 nights. Jungkook's anger faltered. 9 nights. He barely slept. Why didn't anyone tell me? You didn't remember. Did Jimin stay with me? Yes. Every night. Yes. Jungkook looked down. His fingers trembled. Then why did he leave? The man looked at him. Because on the 10th night you woke up. Jungkook swallowed. What happened? You looked at Jimin. And you were terrified. The words struck harder than anything else. Jungkook closed his eyes. Another memory surfaced. A hospital room. White curtains. A heart monitor. Jimin sitting beside the bed. His eyes red from exhaustion. Jungkook looking at him. Then screaming, "Get away from me!" Jungkook opened his eyes. He stumbled backward. "No!" The man caught his shoulder. "You remembered." Jungkook pressed both hands against his head. "I said that." "Yes." "I told Jimin to leave." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you remembered what happened." Jungkook's breathing became ragged. "What did I remember?" The man looked toward the floor. "You remembered Jimin standing over you." Jungkook's eyes widened. "Standing over me? After the accident? What was he doing?" "He was holding a knife." Silence filled the room. Jungkook looked at the photograph in his hand. Jimin's smiling face suddenly felt impossible to reconcile with the image forming in his mind. "No, he wasn't attacking you." Jungkook looked up. "What?" "He was cutting the seatbelt." "Then why was I afraid?" "Because you woke up at the exact moment he pulled the knife away." Jungkook's breathing slowed slightly. "He saved me." "Yes, but I thought." "You thought he was going to hurt you." Jungkook looked away. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Then why didn't he explain?" "He tried." "And?" "You couldn't hear him." Jungkook frowned. "What?" "You had temporary hearing loss after the accident." The room seemed to become quieter. Jungkook remembered the sensation. A ringing in his ears. People moving their mouths without sound. Jimin crying. Jimin touching his face. Jimin saying something. But Jungkook couldn't hear it. "You tried to explain," Jungkook whispered. The man nodded. But Jimin realized something. "What?" "If you remembered the list, they would come for you again." So he erased it. He erased the memory of the entire night. Jungkook looked at the ring. "Then why give me this?" "Because Jimin's memory came back before yours." "When?" "Recently." "How recently?" 3 weeks ago." Jungkook stared at him. "That's why he disappeared." "Yes." "He remembered everything." "Yes." "And he knew they would come after me." "Yes." Jungkook slowly sat down. For several minutes, neither man spoke. Rain continued falling above them. Then Jungkook whispered, "Why didn't Jimin just tell me?" "Because he knew you." Jungkook looked up. The man continued, "Jimin knew that if he told you the truth, you would follow him." Jungkook gave a bitter laugh. "He was right." "Yes." Jungkook looked at the photograph again. He turned it over. The words on the back suddenly seemed different. "If you're reading this, I failed to keep you away from me." He remembered Jimin's face. The way Jimin had looked at him before leaving. Not like someone saying goodbye. Like someone asking forgiveness without having the courage to say the words. Jungkook stood. "Where is he?" The man hesitated. "You aren't going to like the answer." "I don't care." "He's at the old observatory." Jungkook's heart skipped. "The place outside the city." "Yes." "Why?" "Because that's where everything began." Jungkook picked up his jacket. The man stopped him. "Before you go, there's something else." "What?" The man handed him a small recorder. "Jimin left this for you." Jungkook stared at it. "When?" "Yesterday." Jungkook pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then Jimin's voice emerged. Jungkook. Jungkook closed his eyes. Hearing Jimin's voice again hurt more than he expected. If you're listening to this, then you found the ring. A faint breath followed. I don't know whether I should be relieved or terrified. Jimin paused. I wanted to tell you everything. Another pause. But every time I imagined looking into your eyes and saying what happened, I remembered the way you looked at me in that hospital room. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. I remember being afraid of you. Jimin's voice trembled. But what you don't remember is that I was afraid too. The recording continued. I was afraid that one day you would remember everything and hate me. Jungkook wiped his face. I need you to know something. Jimin's voice became softer. I never hurt you. The sentence lingered. I came close to losing you. I made terrible choices. I lied to you. I manipulated your memories. I disappeared without explanation. I hurt you in ways I can never undo. Jimin breathed shakily. But I never hurt you intentionally. Jungkook pressed his lips together. I gave you the ring because I needed you to have something that would lead you to the truth. A faint sound came from the recording. Like metal touching wood. The ring isn't a key to a place. Jungkook looked at his hand. It is a key to your memory. His heartbeat accelerated. When you put it on, it activates something I had hidden 3 years ago. Jungkook stared at the ring. What? Jimin continued. I didn't know whether it would work. The recording crackled. But if you're hearing this, then it did. Jungkook looked at the man. What did it activate? The man shook his head. I don't know. Jimin's voice returned. Jungkook, there is one thing I need you to remember before you come looking for me. Jungkook held his breath. You weren't afraid of me because I hurt you. A pause. You were afraid of me because you saw what I was willing to do to protect you. The recording ended. Jungkook stood motionless. The man watched him. What are you going to do? Jungkook slipped the ring securely onto his finger. I'm going to find Jimin. And if he doesn't want you there. Jungkook looked toward the door. He can tell me himself. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The city smelled of wet stone and cold earth. Jungkook walked into the night, carrying the ring Jimin had entrusted to him. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't following a stranger. He was following the fragments of a life he had forgotten. And somewhere beyond the sleeping city, Jimin was waiting at the observatory, surrounded by memories he had spent years trying to bury. Jimin stood alone beneath the broken dome, watching the stars through the open roof. In his hand was an old photograph. Jungkook was smiling in it. Jimin touched the photograph gently. I'm sorry, Jungkook. His voice disappeared into the night. I should have told you the truth the first time. He looked toward the distant road. For the first time, Jimin wasn't afraid of Jungkook remembering. He was afraid of Jungkook remembering everything and still choosing to stay. Because Jimin knew that forgiveness was not something he could ask for. It was something Jungkook would have to decide for himself. And when Jimin finally heard the distant sound of approaching footsteps beneath the observatory hill, he didn't run. He simply closed his eyes and waited for Jungkook. Jimin! Jungkook's voice echoed beneath the broken dome of the old observatory. Jimin opened his eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Moonlight spilled through the fractured roof, silvering Jimin's face and revealing how exhausted he truly was. His jacket was damp from the night air. His hair moved slightly in the cold wind. Jungkook stood several meters away. The ring was still on his finger. Jimin's gaze immediately fell to it. You came. Jungkook laughed bitterly. You knew I would. Jimin looked down. Yes. Then why did you leave? Jimin didn't answer. Jungkook walked closer. Why did you give me the ring? Still nothing. Why did you erase my memories? Jimin's jaw tightened. And why, Jungkook continued, his voice breaking, did you make me believe we were strangers? Jimin finally looked at him. Because I was afraid. Of me. Of losing you. Jungkook stopped. Jimin looked toward the stars. 3 years ago, I thought I could protect you by controlling what you knew. And you were wrong. Yes. You lied to me. Yes. You made decisions about my life without asking me. Yes. Jungkook's eyes filled with tears. Then why should I trust you now? Jimin looked at him. You shouldn't. The answer stunned Jungkook. Jimin continued. You shouldn't trust me because I ask you to. You shouldn't trust me because I gave you a ring. You shouldn't trust me because of everything we used to be. He took a slow breath. If you ever trust me again, it should be because I finally give you the truth. Jungkook's expression hardened. Then tell me. Jimin nodded. I will. He reached into his coat and removed a small black notebook. Jungkook recognized it immediately. It was the same notebook he had seen in the photographs. What is that? Everything I couldn't tell you. Jimin placed it on the observatory floor. Jungkook didn't pick it up. What's inside? My mistakes. That doesn't answer my question. Your memories. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin opened the notebook. Page after page was filled with handwriting. Dates, names, locations, descriptions, and one name appeared more than any other. Jungkook. Jungkook stepped closer. What is this? The truth. Jimin turned several pages. 3 years ago, we discovered that someone was using a private network to manipulate people's identities. Jungkook frowned. What does that have to do with me? You were investigating them. I was. You didn't know you were investigating them. Jungkook looked at him. How? Your work brought you into contact with financial records that were connected to them. Jimin pointed at a page. You found something you weren't supposed to find. What? A list of payments. To whom? People inside the organization. Jungkook stared at the page. I don't remember any of this. I know. Jimin's voice softened. You were followed. By them. Yes. Then what did you do? I followed you. Jungkook looked at him. Why? Because I was assigned to watch you. The silence that followed was enormous. Jungkook's face changed. You were assigned to watch me. Yes. By them. Jimin nodded. For how long? 6 months. Jungkook took a step backward. You were spying on me. Yes. You lied from the beginning. Yes. Then everything between us started as a lie. Jungkook closed his eyes. The words hurt. But Jimin didn't look away. I met you because I was supposed to monitor you, Jimin said. I was supposed to find out what you knew. And did you? Yes. What did I know? Enough to put you in danger. Jungkook opened his eyes. Then why didn't you turn me in? Jimin looked at him. Because I fell in love with you. Jungkook froze. The words were simple, quiet, but they seemed to shake the entire observatory. Jimin looked away. I didn't plan it. Jungkook swallowed. When? I don't know. Jimin smiled faintly. Maybe when you started leaving the last piece of cake for me. Jungkook's eyes watered. Maybe when you complained that I drank coffee too slowly. A small laugh escaped Jungkook despite himself. Jimin continued. Maybe when you started falling asleep on my shoulder. The smile disappeared. Or maybe when I realized I was terrified every time you walked away from me. Jungkook stared at him. Then why did you erase me? Because they found out about us. Jimin's expression darkened. They gave me an order. What order? To make you disappear. Jungkook's breathing stopped. They wanted you dead. Yes. And you. I was supposed to do it. Jungkook stared at Jimin. But you didn't. No. What did you do? I created another plan. Jimin's voice became quieter. I made them believe you were dead. Jungkook's eyes widened. You faked my death. Yes. Why? Because it was the only way I could keep you alive. Jungkook looked down. And the accident? Jimin nodded. That was the moment everything went wrong. What happened? I was moving you to another location. Why didn't you tell me? Because someone betrayed us. Who? Jimin looked toward the entrance. His expression changed. Someone who is closer than you think. Jungkook immediately turned. The observatory was empty. Who? Jimin didn't answer. Instead, he reached for Jungkook's hand. Jungkook hesitated. But he didn't pull away. Jimin's fingers closed around his. You asked why I told you to keep the ring until I got back. Jungkook looked at him. Yes. Jimin slowly turned the ring. The tiny numbers were visible beneath the moonlight. 07-1903. They aren't numbers. Jungkook frowned. Then what are they? Coordinates. Jungkook's eyes widened. Coordinates to what? To the place where we first met. That bookstore. No. Jimin shook his head. To the place before that. Jungkook's face went pale. I don't remember. You will. How? Jimin looked at the ring. Because the ring doesn't just unlock the memory. He touched the inside of the band. It was designed to unlock the door. What door? Jimin's expression hardened. The one beneath the old hospital. Jungkook stared at him. What is beneath the hospital? Jimin didn't answer. Instead, a distant sound echoed through the observatory. A car door slammed. Then another. Jimin immediately released Jungkook's hand. They found us. Jungkook looked toward the road. Several headlights appeared beyond the trees. Jimin grabbed the notebook. Jungkook, we have to go. Who are they? Not the police. How many? Enough. Jungkook looked at Jimin. You said you wouldn't lie to me anymore. I'm not. The headlights moved closer. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's wrist. Run! They rushed down the observatory stairs. Footsteps followed behind them. Jungkook could hear people shouting. Jimin pulled him through a narrow side passage. Where are we going? Down. Down where? Jimin stopped beside a stone wall. He pressed his palm against it. Nothing happened. Jungkook stared. What are you doing? Waiting. For what? Jimin looked at the ring, then at Jungkook. You. Jungkook placed his hand against the wall. The ring suddenly became warm. A faint vibration traveled through his fingers. Then a hidden mechanism clicked. The stone wall moved. A dark staircase appeared beneath them. Jungkook stared into the darkness. Jimin whispered, "This is where your memories are." Behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Jungkook looked at Jimin. "After you." Jimin shook his head. "No." "Why?" "Because this time." Jimin looked at him with tears in his eyes. "You should go first." Jungkook stepped onto the first stair. The darkness swallowed his shoes. Then the second. The third. Jimin followed. The stone wall slowly closed behind them. And somewhere deep beneath the old hospital, a machine that had been silent for 3 years suddenly came alive. A single screen illuminated the underground chamber. On it appeared one sentence: "Memory restoration, subject Jungkook, beginning." The screen flickered once, and then the underground chamber filled with a low mechanical hum. Jungkook stood completely still. Blue-white light spread across the walls, revealing a room buried beneath layers of concrete and steel. Dust floated through the air like ash. Old cables hung from the ceiling. Along one wall were dozens of black monitors, most of them dead, while several others displayed fragments of dates, names, and medical records. Jimin remained beside Jungkook. For once, Jimin wasn't trying to lead him. He wasn't hiding anything. He simply waited. Jungkook looked at the largest screen. His name appeared in the center. Jungkook. Beneath it were several dates. 3 years ago. 2 years ago. 1 year ago. And then today. "What is this place?" Jungkook whispered. Jimin answered quietly. "The memory archive." "Who built it?" "I did." Jungkook turned sharply. "You?" Jimin nodded. "I helped build it." "Why?" "Because I needed somewhere to store the memories they couldn't destroy." Jungkook stared at the monitors. "Whose memories?" "Yours." Jungkook's chest tightened. Jimin walked toward an old control panel. His fingers trembled as he touched the surface. I knew there was a possibility that someone would eventually discover what I had done, so I created a backup. A backup of me. A backup of the truth. Jungkook looked around. "So everything I forgot is here." "Not everything." "Why not?" "Because memories aren't files, Jungkook." Jimin's voice softened. "They're connected to feelings, sounds, smells, places. I couldn't preserve all of that, but I preserved enough." Jungkook stepped closer to the screen. "Show me." Jimin hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "You may see things you don't want to see." "I've already spent 3 years living inside a lie." Jungkook's voice cracked. "I'd rather know the truth." Jimin looked at him for a long moment. Then he pressed a button. The room went dark. A projector came alive. A hospital corridor appeared on the wall. Jungkook stared. He recognized it. Not from memory. From instinct. The same cold, fluorescent lights. The same pale walls. The same polished floor. Then Jimin appeared in the recording. Younger. Exhausted. His clothes were covered in rain. He was carrying Jungkook. Jungkook's breath caught. The recording showed Jimin placing Jungkook on a hospital bed. A doctor rushed toward them. Jimin kept repeating something. "Please save him." The sound was faint but clear. Jungkook watched himself lying motionless. His face was pale. There was blood on his temple. Jimin stood beside him. He looked terrified. The recording changed. Jimin was sitting beside the hospital bed. His head rested against the mattress. He hadn't slept. Jungkook watched the younger Jimin reach for his hand. "I'm sorry." The recording was barely audible. "I should never have brought you into this." Jungkook's eyes burned. The scene changed again. Morning. Jimin was still there. Night. Still there. Morning again. Still there. 9 days. Jimin never left. Then the 10th day appeared. Jungkook saw himself wake. His eyes opened. Jimin immediately stood. Jungkook. Jungkook watched himself stare at Jimin. Fear appeared on his own face. "Don't come near me." The younger Jimin froze. "Jungkook, don't touch me. You're safe." "Where am I?" "The hospital." "What happened?" Jimin hesitated. "You were in an accident." Jungkook's recorded expression changed. "What accident?" Jimin looked away. "You don't remember?" "No." Jimin closed his eyes. Then Jungkook saw something change. The monitors began flashing. The younger Jungkook suddenly grabbed his head. Images appeared on the screen. A car. Rain. A road. A man. A knife. "Jimin!" Jungkook screamed. "Get away from me." Jimin stepped backward. "Jungkook, listen to me. You were there." "Yes." "You had a knife." "I was cutting the seatbelt." "You lied." "I was trying to save you." The recording became chaotic. Nurses rushed into the room. Jimin backed away. Jungkook watched himself crying. Then the image froze. Jimin's face remained on the wall. He looked broken. Jungkook couldn't watch anymore. "Stop." Jimin immediately turned off the projector. Silence returned. Jungkook wiped his eyes. "I remember that moment." Jimin didn't move. "I remember being afraid." "I know. But I also remember something else." Jimin looked at him. "You were crying." Jimin swallowed. "Yes." "You kept saying my name." "Yes." "I couldn't hear you." Jimin nodded. "I know." Jungkook looked down. "I'm sorry." Jimin's eyes widened. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because I thought you were hurting me." "You had every reason to be afraid." "No." Jungkook shook his head. "You were trying to save me." Jimin looked away. "I still lied to you. But you saved me. I put you in that situation." The words came quietly. "I was the reason you were there." Jungkook stared at him. Jimin's shoulders lowered. "I thought I could control everything." He laughed softly, bitterly. "I thought I could watch you, protect you, manipulate the situation, and somehow keep you untouched. You couldn't." "No." Jimin looked at Jungkook. "I couldn't even protect your memories." Jungkook stepped closer. "You protected my life." Jimin's eyes filled with tears. "That doesn't erase what I did." "I know." "Then don't forgive me because you feel sorry for me." Jungkook stopped. "I won't." Jimin nodded. "I don't want pity." "You won't get it." For the first time that night, a faint smile appeared on Jimin's face. "That's very Jungkook." Jungkook almost smiled. Then he noticed something on the control panel. A small red indicator was blinking. What is that? Jimin turned. His expression changed. The archive is still connected. To what? The external network. Can they see us? Not anymore. Jimin quickly pulled several cables from the panel. The monitors went dark. He exhaled. They can't access this place now. Jungkook looked at him. Then why did you bring me here? Because I needed you to see this before we destroyed it. Destroyed. Jimin nodded. This place contains enough information to expose everyone involved. Then why destroy it? Because it also contains information that could put innocent people in danger. Jungkook thought for a moment. Then copy the evidence. I already did. Jimin removed a small storage device from his jacket. Everything important is here. Where will you send it? I won't. Jungkook frowned. Why? Because there's still one name missing. Whose? Jimin looked at him. Mine. Jungkook went quiet. You're part of the organization. I was. And they still think you're working for them. Yes. Jungkook understood. You're going to expose them. Yes. And make them believe you're still loyal. Yes. That's why you disappeared. Jimin nodded. I needed them to think I was running. But you weren't running. No. Jimin looked at Jungkook. I was preparing to come back. Jungkook's eyes dropped to the ring. That's what you meant. Jimin nodded. Keep this until I get back. You knew you'd come back. I hoped. Jungkook looked at him. You didn't know where you were coming from. Jimin smiled faintly. Exactly. The words hung between them. For the first time, Jungkook understood the strange sentence. Jimin hadn't known which part of his life he would return from. The frightened man. The liar. The spy. The person who had loved Jungkook. Or the person who had spent years trying to protect him. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. Jimin looked down at their fingers. Why are you doing that? Because I'm tired of letting you disappear. Jimin's eyes softened. You don't have to stay. I know. You don't have to forgive me. I know. You don't have to love me. Jungkook went silent. Jimin looked away. I shouldn't have said that. Jungkook gently turned Jimin's face back toward him. You said it. Jimin's eyes met his. And Jungkook's voice was barely a whisper. I remember enough. Jimin swallowed. Enough for what? Enough to know that whatever we were 3 years ago. Jungkook's fingers tightened around Jimin's. Wasn't a lie. Jimin closed his eyes. A tear escaped. Jungkook wiped it away. You don't have to be afraid of me remembering anymore. Jimin laughed softly through his tears. I'm still afraid. Why? Because now you remember enough to choose. Jungkook looked at him. And what do you want me to choose? Jimin answered honestly. You. Jungkook's heart pounded. That's not a choice. Jimin looked confused. Jungkook smiled through his tears. That's an answer. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Jimin leaned his forehead against Jungkook's. The cold underground chamber suddenly felt warmer. Outside, the city continued moving. Cars passed. Rain began falling again. But beneath the old hospital, surrounded by memories they had spent years trying to escape, Jimin and Jungkook finally stopped running from the past. Jimin whispered, "I'm sorry." Jungkook closed his eyes. "I know. I should have trusted you. I know. I should have told you everything. I know. I don't know if I deserve another chance." Jungkook opened his eyes. "Maybe you don't." Jimin's expression fell slightly. "But I'm giving you one anyway." Jimin looked at him. "Why?" Jungkook glanced at the ring. "Because you asked me to keep it until you got back." He smiled. "And you finally came back." Jimin's eyes filled with tears again. This time he didn't hide them. Jungkook took his hand. Together they walked toward the exit. Behind them, the memory archive remained silent. The machines were shutting down one by one. The screens went black. The last image disappeared. It was an old photograph of Jimin and Jungkook standing beneath the rain. Their hands were intertwined. Neither of them remembered taking the photograph. But now they knew what it meant. They had once chosen each other. And after everything that had been taken from them, they were choosing each other again. When they emerged from beneath the hospital, dawn was beginning to break. The sky was pale gray. The rain had stopped. Jimin stood beside Jungkook and looked toward the horizon. "We still have a lot to fix." Jungkook nodded. "I know. They'll come after us. I know. It won't be easy. I know." Jimin looked at him. "You keep saying you know." Jungkook smiled. "Because this time, I'm not letting you face it alone." Jimin looked down at their joined hands. Then he squeezed Jungkook's fingers. For the first time in 3 years, neither of them was pretending. And as the first sunlight touched the city, Jungkook finally understood what the ring had really been. It wasn't a promise that Jimin would return. It was a promise that even after everything was lost, there would still be a way back to each other. The first sunlight touched the wet streets as Jimin and Jungkook walked away from the old hospital, their shadows stretching quietly behind them. For the first time in years, there was no locked door between them, no erased memory, no secret message waiting on a forgotten phone. There was only the truth. Jungkook looked down at the ring. "Do you remember what you told me that night?" Jimin glanced at him. "Which part?" "Keep this until I get back." Jimin smiled faintly. "I remember. You never told me where you were coming from." Jimin stopped walking. For a moment, his expression became distant. Then he looked at Jungkook. "From the worst version of myself." Jungkook said nothing. Jimin continued. "I thought I had to become someone ruthless to protect you. I thought love meant making every decision for you, even if it meant destroying the person you trusted." His voice trembled. "But I was wrong." Jungkook reached for his hand. "Love isn't protection if the person you're protecting has no choice." "I know. And love isn't a promise that nothing bad will happen." "I know. It's choosing to stay when everything becomes difficult." Jimin looked at their intertwined fingers. "Are you sure?" Jungkook smiled. "No." Jimin laughed softly. "That's not very reassuring." "I'm sure about one thing." "What?" "I don't want to lose you again." Jimin's eyes softened. "You won't." Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "You can't promise that." Jimin smiled. "Then I'll promise something else." "What?" "If I ever have to leave, I'll tell you where I'm going." Jungkook laughed. "That sounds like a much better promise." They continued walking. Behind them, the underground archive had been destroyed, but the evidence had already been secured. The people responsible would eventually face the consequences of what they had done. There would be investigations. There would be difficult questions. There would be days when Jungkook remembered another fragment of the past and struggled with what it meant. There would be nights when Jimin woke from nightmares and reached instinctively for Jungkook's hand. And there would be moments when forgiveness felt impossible. But they would face them together. Not as the people they had been 3 years ago. Not as strangers pretending they had never loved each other. But as two people who had survived the consequences of their choices. Weeks later, Jimin returned to the apartment where everything had begun. The rain was falling again. Jungkook was standing by the window, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Jimin. Jimin took a sip and immediately made a face. Still terrible. Jungkook laughed. You're still drinking it. Because you made it. That sounds familiar. Jimin looked at him. You remember. Some things. Everything. Jungkook shook his head. Not yet. Jimin looked slightly afraid. Jungkook noticed. He reached across the table and took Jimin's hand. And that's okay. Jimin's shoulders relaxed. I used to think forgetting was the worst thing that happened to us. Jungkook looked at him. What do you think now? I think the worst thing would have been remembering everything and still believing we had no future. Jimin's eyes filled with quiet emotion. Jungkook smiled. We have one now. Jimin looked at the ring. You're still wearing it. Jungkook glanced at his finger. You told me to keep it. Until I got back. You're back. Yes. So. Jungkook shook his head. I'm keeping it. Jimin laughed. Why? Because it reminds me that you came back. Jimin reached across the table and gently touched the ring. Then keep it. Jungkook looked into his eyes. I will. Outside, the rain continued falling against the glass. The same sound that had once announced fear. The same sound that had once accompanied a goodbye. But now it sounded different. It sounded like home. Jimin leaned against Jungkook's shoulder. For a while, neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to explain. Nothing left to hide. The past would always be part of them. The scars would remain. Some memories might never return completely. But they no longer needed to recover every lost moment to understand what mattered. Jimin had left once believing that disappearing was the only way to protect Jungkook. Jungkook had spent years believing that Jimin was a stranger. In the end, both had been wrong. Jimin hadn't needed to disappear. Jungkook hadn't needed to remember everything. They only needed to find each other again. Jimin closed his eyes. Jungkook. Thank you for keeping the ring. Jungkook smiled. Thank you for coming back. Jimin lifted his head. Their eyes met. And this time, there was no fear in either of them. Only certainty. The ring remained on Jungkook's finger, no longer a mysterious key, no longer evidence of a forgotten past, no longer a symbol of a goodbye. It had become something simpler. A reminder that sometimes people leave because they are afraid. Sometimes they make terrible choices because they believe love requires sacrifice. Sometimes memories disappear, but feelings survive in places the mind cannot reach. And sometimes, after years of darkness, someone finds their way back. Jimin had once placed the ring in Jungkook's hand and whispered, "Keep this until I get back." He had never told Jungkook where he was coming from. Now Jungkook knew. Jimin had been coming back from every mistake, every secret, every fear, and every version of himself that had once convinced him he wasn't worthy of being loved. And when Jimin finally returned, Jungkook was still there. Waiting, not because he had been asked to, but because he had chosen to be. Jimin smiled. Jungkook squeezed his hand. And outside their window, the rain slowly faded into silence. For the first time, there was nowhere else Jimin needed to go. And nowhere else Jungkook needed to wait. They were home.